Hey guys, welcome to another Unity 3D tutorial, and this is going to be part 13, or the first part of part 13 for going on with the survival series. So today we're going to be focusing on animal hunting. Now, before anybody gets carried away with themselves, the animal hunting is going to consist of, we're going to have some animal prints that you could place on the floor or somehow generate them within your game. Then you're going to have a collider over those footprints, and then as long as you, when you try and craft a trap, you'll be able to place that trap from the crafting option menu, and then in the next videos from there we're going to write a little script to make sure that when you leave that trap alone, it might catch an animal or catch something which you then add to your inventory, which could class as meat or whatever it might be, so it can allude to the fact of some really basic style hunting which can just help you get started with your game. This is going to be the introduction, so it's going to be just setting it up and laying everything out. Now, I've got a folder called crafting, and I've got some folders with the scripts and the prefabs and just miscellaneous for the models and the things that I'm going to bring in. So when I upload this to my website, what we're going to do is we're going to have, this is the big standard assets for the survival series, and we're going to have some items in here which are going to be for the setup. Now, what you want to do first of all is import the FBX and the animal print PSD. Now, you can do that by, if we go to right click on the miscellaneous folder, go import new asset, and then we'll look for the animal print. So that comes in, the imports we can leave, and then I'll import a new asset, and I will import the bear trap. And then we can open up the preview, and you can see it's just a basic sort of trap I've made, which can allude to something for your game. Now, scale that up maybe to 0.03, and then when you drag it in, if you're in your scene view, you can drag it in and you can see it just there. And obviously I'll provide these for free. Obviously nothing fantastic, but it's just something to get you started. Now, if we get rid of that for now, you can take on generate light mapping UVs if you're going to use that sort of thing. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to sort of add these animal prints to the floor. And the animal print is just this picture here, which is a very small texture. What we could do is turn the compression size down to 256, because that's the size of the image. Now, what I usually like to do is create game object, create other, and then I will create a plane. And I will call this plane animal print. And then what we can do from there is drag the picture onto the plane, and we can see it's really massive. What we can do is we can rotate this around, say, scale it down a little bit, something like that. And then we can place it just close to the floor. We'll have a look at it in a minute. Then on the animal print, on the material that we've got, is we can set that to transparent cutout or transparent diffuse for now. And transparent diffuse will allow it to have the transparency of the alpha, so we don't see the background. And then we can obviously put that closer to the floor if we need to. And what we can do is, if we close that up and add a prefab, in the right click the prefab folder, click create prefab, and we'll just add animal print prefab. And then what we can do is drag the animal print to the prefabbed item, so we'll always remember it. Now we can drag that out as many times as we need to. So we can just add this, like, say, like this, and I can just duplicate that myself, and we'll just create some footprints like that. We might need to bring them closer to the terrain, but we can leave that for now. Now, what I like to do is create a game object, create empty, so we can organize this together. And then I'll call it animal print again. And what I'll do is I'll drag all the animal prints into the main selection. That's very nice like that. What we'll do is we want a collider to be able to detect whether we can build something. So what we can do is go game object, create other, and cube. And now we'll create a cube. Obviously, if you're following Unity 5 and things, this might be a little bit different, but the concept is similar. We'll make sure the cube is big enough to encapsulate the entire sort of print section, because we only want to be able to maybe set the trap where the animals will end up walking or will walk again. So this is just to simulate that one, that make it nice and big. So that's about there, say. And then what we'll do is we'll say that that's the animal collider. And what we can do is we can add that to the animal print folder, so to keep it nice and neat. And what we want to do is create a tag. So we can add a new tag at the top and call it animal track. Then we'll go back on our cube or our animal collider and set that as animal track for now. And then we can remove the mesh renderer for now. You can just untick the box or leave it for now. Okay, so we actually imported the bear trap, so we want to be able to make that into two types of prefabs for this tutorial. So in the prefabs, what we want to do is create a new prefab. I want to call the prefab trap player, because there's going to be one prefab which is going to be on the player, which is not really going to do much other than appear and disappear. And then we're going to have one that's going to make itself spawn, which is going to have the script which controls what it does. So the trap player is going to be whatever animal trap we've got. So if we go back into the miscellaneous folder, pull the trap in to the scene, and you can see it's over this side here. Now we can add this to the trap player and the trap prefab. Then what we'll do is we'll get rid of that now from the scene. So trap player, so this is the thing that's going to be actually on our player. So we'll add that now. So we'll go to we'll add that here, put it in front of our player. We'll go on the game view. We'll be able to, if I put it just to the side here, we can see then what's going on, that it's a little bit offset there. So if I pull it up and position it roughly in front of our character, like so, that will do for now. What we'll do is we'll parent that to the main camera, so it'll always follow our player around. And what we need to do is we'll just get rid of the animator. If you've got that, it'll have a no-named material on it. You can create one if you want, if you've got more of a metally material. So that's okay for now. We can hide that if we need to. We'll add a script to this object after, which is going to be able to create the prefab. Now on the prefabbed version, again, we'll remove that animator because there's no animation on it. We'll add a component, physics, and rigid body. And the rigid body is going to allow it to fall when we instantiate the prefab, just like the other things we've crafted. Then we can go component, physics, and a box collider so that it doesn't fall through the terrain. Okay, so that's the basis for it now. Now, originally we had a crafting script on our main player. Now we're going to edit this script to make it so that we can then create our new trap. So what we're going to do is we had, so the player prefabs up here we had variables to make a campfire, a tent. We're going to change this to trap. And obviously you can change that to trap icon if you replace that later on. Now we'll go to the GUIs. Now you can see we talked about tent here. Now here we'll say that the content here is the spare icon, and then if we've used a certain amount of wood and stone, we'll set trap, so the game object that we're talking about up at the top, to true. We'll save yes. That's all we need to do in the crafting script because we did that before. So we're just saying that if we click the actual button, which has the spare icon picture and it's got a tooltip, and we've got this amount of resources in the inventory, we'll be able to make sure that we make the trap visible on the player and then take away from the inventory. So if I show you now on the first person controller again, we can see that we have the trap, so we need the trap game object here. So what we can do is we're going to add trap player to there. The spare icon is going to be still the tent icon, and what we can do to test this is, so we'll untick the actual object to appear. Now if we press play, you can see, well, I'll make this maximize on play so it's easier to see. I press play, I press C to craft, and then you can see that there's a spare item tooltip here. If I click that, the object will appear, and you can see it in front of our character as if we could create it. Now obviously it doesn't do anything because that just makes it appear. We need to add another script to do something with it. So okay, what we'll do is in the script we'll right click and we'll create a new JavaScript. Then we'll call this trap build, and then what we'll do is we'll open this up in MonoDevelop. When we've done that, what we're going to want to do is I'll delete the two starting functions, and what we'll do is we'll write a variable. This is going to be very similar to the campfire build, very similar, but with some slight differences, but I'll go through it again. I'll say trap prefab as type transform and variable player as type game object. Then I'll have a private variable called can build as type boolean equal to true. Then we'll have a function start, 2 brackets and then 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll say renderer dot material dot color equals color with a capital dot red with a semicolon. Then we'll say renderer dot material dot color dot a is equal to 0.5, and then we'll start by writing player equals game object dot find in quotes in the brackets first person controller, and then we'll close it up and add a semicolon. So what we're doing here is as soon as we actually enable the trap that's on our player, we're going to make sure that we change its colour to red to indicate that we can't build it yet, and we're going to change its alpha or its transparency to make it slightly see-through, and then we're going to just add we're going to find the first person controller so it adds it to the player slot automatically for us. Now what we're going to do is we're going to need to make sure that when we go inside the collider with our object, we're going to need to make sure that we detect a collision. So we need to say function on trigger enter open brackets call colon collider, then 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll say the if call dot. Now we need to make sure that's a lowercase c because it sometimes changes it to try and be helpful, but it's not. So call dot game object dot tag is equal to animal track, and then we'll close that up. So that's the tag that we initially set for the actual collider. We'll add 2 curly brackets below there, and we'll just copy the 2 renderer.material little lines above there. We'll paste them in here, and then we'll say color dot green. Then we'll leave that in nicely, and we'll say can build is equal to true. Now below here what we'll do is we'll say function on trigger exit, then open brackets call colon collider again, close that up, add 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll do pretty much copy the same lines again, paste those in, and say that if call.gameObject.tag is equal to animal track, then we'll set it to red again, and we'll say that can build equals false. Then what we're going to do is we're going to just make an update function to detect when we can actually build the item. So if I then say function update 2 brackets 2 curly brackets below, then I'll say if input dot get key down open brackets and then in quotes B for build, close that brackets, then say and can build is equal to true. Then I'll add 2 curly brackets below, and I will say instantiate open brackets trap prefab comma player dot transform dot position plus vector 3 open bracket 0, 0, 5, so that's going to be the position of where we'll initially position it away from the character. Then we're going to say comma quaternion dot identity, close that up and add a semicolon. Then we'll say player dot get component, open brackets crafting, close that up, dot trap dot set active in brackets false, and we'll save that out. So initially what I'll go through is that we've got two variables, which are the trap prefab and the player, and then we've got a boolean to detect whether we can build the item or not. When the script initially starts, or when we make the item active from the crafting script, we're going to make sure that it's red, and we find the player. If we enter the collider, which is animal track, we're going to change it to green, which makes it seem like, oh yeah, we can build it now. We're going to say that can build is equal to true. If we exit the collider, which is animal track, it's going to change it back to red, and we'll go, oh, we can't build it. Now, if on the update function, if we press B and we're inside it so we can build, we're going to instantiate the trap prefab at the player's position, 5 units on the X, Y, and 5 units on the Z, which is further away from the player, and transform its position. And then we're going to say that player, so we're looking for the player, which is the FPS controller, and we're looking for the crafting script, which is here, and then we're looking for the trap object, which is that game object here, and then we're going to say we're going to set it to false. So initially, if we set it to false, this script then doesn't exist anymore, so we can't make it do anything or build it again. In the trap build script, it's best to make sure that the can build is equal to false to begin with, so just set that at the top to false, and when we go back into Unity, what we'll do is we'll make sure that our animal collider has got its box collider on, it's set to is trigger, and the mesh render is disabled. So that's all well and good. We'll check that the prefabs are all okay. So the prefab that's going to be created has got a box collider, it's got a rigid body which uses gravity. Now on the trap player, what we're going to need is we've got that script on, and we need to drag the trap prefab onto there if we don't already. We need to add a component, physics, and rigid body, because to do a collision with something has to have a rigid body to detect it. So we don't want to use gravity on it because we don't want it to fall, so we'll set it to is kinematic. And then what we'll do to make sure is we'll add a physics and we'll add a box collider to it as well. So then what we'll do is we will press play, and then from play, if we open up the crafting, craft a trap, you'll see that it's red at the moment. If we go towards the box that we've got, you can see it goes green. If we go away and we press B, we won't be able to craft it. Now if I go back to my animal tracks and I press B on it, we'll have instantiated a trap which can just be placed on top of the animal tracks for that instance. And now we've created that, in the next tutorial what we'll be able to do is on this prefab we're going to create a controller which is going to sort of randomize the possibility of catching an animal, because sometimes you might not catch it and it might just close up or disappear, or we might be able to do something else. So that was just a way to set up the initial bit of the animal trapping, and obviously this could be more complicated, but this is just the basis to show everybody that you can start with something really simple and go on forever. So thanks again for watching, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Cheers.